Professional Wrestling, Calgary, Alberta, Canada. This is Wrestling is for Losers, the podcast that's not fake, it's predetermined.
What's up, losers? I'm going to keep trying different inflections till I find the perfect one. But yes, hello, it's me, it's Shoe Boots. And tonight, a new era for AEW begins. Or is it just Adam Copium? Right? All right, we're going to talk about WrestleDream. Maybe we'll talk about Payback a bit. I don't know. It's going to be an interesting night. We're going to talk about it's an interesting night because we are without Coltrane. So we are going to answer the biggest question that's on every listener/viewer's mind. Can Shoe and Tex actually carry a conversation without Coltrane? We will find out tonight. And it's going to be either glorious or really painful. But don't worry, if it sucks, then we just won't do it again. I'm just kidding. It's going to be fine. We'll just probably resort to insults by the end of the show. But speaking of insults, let me introduce my co-host. He is an insult to personal introductions. It is Texas Crazy Horse, everybody.
Oh, well, first I want to answer the big question, and the answer is no, we cannot hold a conversation. So let's go ahead and answer that. But if you look here, Coltrane wrote me an intro. He sent it to me on PDF, and I wrote it down. And so I have the best intro I'm ever going to do right here. Are you ready? Sup, Shoe? That's it. That's all he wrote.
All right, well, it is at least top 2. I'll give you that. All right.
Thank God Coltrane's not here to talk about moose milk and turnbuckles and all in and all out or whatever he says.
Yeah.
Because it just frees up the show. Let me shine. And he's not holding me back. It's about time I get to spread my wings and not have him interrupting me.
Yeah, that's a big problem with this show when Coltrane interrupts Tex. Thank God we're finally free of it. No, I think it's gonna be interesting because let's face it, one of the most fun parts about this show is having Coltrane on the show because we get to constantly kind of fill him in on stuff. And I think I definitely see it in the chat. I think that even though probably most, if not all listeners of a show like this know quite a bit about wrestling, I think we all kind of enjoy filling somebody in on this stuff. So it's a really fun thing to do to explain to like Coltrane, like, oh yeah, Edge and Christian, they were this tag team. Can you believe it? And he's like, what? But I think especially in light of what happened last night in the world of wrestling, it might be fun to just like geek out a bit for and talk a little bit about Adam Copeland. And so we're going to, obviously that's going to come up in the news. It's going to come up in what we watched this week, which I think those two segments will kind of drift together. And then later tonight, we've decided it might be fun if Tex and I just sort of argue a bit about who should be on the Mount Rushmore of wrestling, who's the GOAT of wrestling, all these things that we constantly kind of jab at each other about and say that someday we're going to talk about. Well, Coltrane's not here, so it's probably a good time to maybe dig into it a bit. We'll see what happens. So
it's going to be very bad for you. I apologize.
It's gonna be...
Hopefully this news takes up a lot of our time so you don't have to withstand that beating I'm going to give you later.
Right. You know, there's very little news this week in terms of line items. But the news that there is, I feel like is going to take up some discussion time. And guys, I tweeted out earlier today, WrestleDream. I can't use the exact language that I used, but WrestleDream, best pay-per-view in AEW history. It's too soon for me to say if it's the best pay-per-view I've ever seen in my life. But I'm just going to have to wait a month so that I can say that. But it was that damn good. Like from every match was amazing. The build up to virtually every match was good. And like, but the matches that weren't like, just like a good pay-per-view has, some matches had a long build up, some had a mid-sized build up, some had a short build up. I feel like ever since AEW All In, AEW has been firing on cylinders in a way that they haven't been for about a year. Now, there is an interesting coincidence of that timeline about certain individuals either gainfully employed / suspended by AEW, but nonetheless, AEW is rocking it right now, and it's something that I've been waiting for this. I've been waiting a year for this. It's so good. Did you? Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't get to watch it, but I
God.
did see the highlights and heard all the rumbles on X or Twitter, whatever, and I saw all the highlights. I will say I do think their pay-per-views have been getting better, and same with WWE. Even the small ones are like, oh, Payback, no one cares, and it was great.
Yeah.
So it's good when they're both just firing off, because one gets good, then it makes you want to watch the other one.
Wait a sec. Payback. Oh, I'm thinking Fastlane. Fastlane's next week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I do think that WWE's been actually. I mean, I don't think it's a secret. WWE's been popping off for a while now. Their storytelling is definitely a cut above what they typically do, and I think that like people who are staunch WWE fans are loving it, and even kind of like I'm a fan of WWE. I'm just like more into like AEW is kind of more my flavor of ice cream, but I think WWE is doing generally good stuff these days, and their match quality has gone way up, especially during their pay-per-views. I would say that for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So the only complaint I keep hearing about AEW, and this is from other people, it's not me, is I do hear a lot that the long-term story building, they have like one story and everything else is very short term. And you saw that with All In.
That's your AEW complaint?
No, it's not me. It's not me. This is what I'm hearing other people say. I'm hearing this on other on the X or on podcasts.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that here's what I mean, this is my opinion. I think that over the last 4 years, AEW has been around roughly 4 years. I think AEW has done like on whole, an objectively like uncontroversially. I shouldn't say that because it is a controversial opinion, I guess, but objectively better job of storytelling than WWE. And that's actually what the draw to them was. And the things that really drew me into WWE or AEW rather was the Kenny Omega and Hangman storyline. Kenny Omega turning heel with the Young Bucks and Don Callis. Like these are kind of the OG storylines. The Chris Jericho as the first champion was amazing. The Le Champion with the Inner Circle and his feud with Moxley. Maxwell Jacob Friedman screwing over Cody Rhodes. Like all these original storylines that were very, very long term, in some case years, were amazing. And I do think that in the last 1 to 2 years, AEW's ability to tell a long-term story has been hindered. But I think that even like I said, even in the last month, you can't really judge their long-term in a month, I guess. But I'm seeing a marked difference in storytelling. We've seen like there's so much build up to WrestleDream compared to All In. It's like night and day different, in my opinion. So we'll see where it goes. Now, WWE, I think the Bloodline storyline, I have my complaints about it. And I do have to just take a moment here. We discussed after we went off the air last week that last week I unfortunately I think maybe the first time in the run of the show, I did not live up to the standard that I promise our listeners and viewers. I did not mention that Cody Rhodes should have won the title at WrestleMania 39 last episode. And I just wanted to sincerely apologize. I will try not to let it happen again. and I'm going to keep that promise right now. Cody Rhodes should have won the title at WrestleMania 39. And ever since then, I have not been crazy about the bloodline. So storyline. And I think, you know what? I think I'm not alone at this point. I think not even WWE's that crazy about the storyline. It's kind of on the shelf right now.
Yeah, I think they kind of painted themselves in a corner because obviously we know most likely it's Cody and Roman at WrestleMania. And they're like, oh no, we have all this time still. So I think they're doing smart pushing it back. And I will agree, AEW, say what you want to say, they have the hottest storyline in wrestling right now with MJF and Adam Cole.
Yeah, wow, that's big of you to say. Yes, I think that I think that, like, okay, where's this card? Where's this card? Where's the WrestleDream card? Okay. I've just Googled it. This isn't the order that they were in. So the Hangman versus Swerve storyline is immediate, like it's a mid-sized storyline. It's been building up for a couple weeks. It's interesting. Bryan Danielson versus Zack Sabre, that wasn't much of a buildup. That's more of Bryan Danielson is basically naming his dream opponents in his last year of wrestling. But yeah, the MJF storyline is great. FTR versus Aussie Open. This is a long rivalry. The other super strong storytelling, in my opinion, in AEW is the Christian Cage storyline, which is which was the main event last night for obvious reasons. But I think that it lived up to being the main event. Like, it didn't just live up to being the main event because of Adam Copeland's arrival. It was the main event. So, and also the Don Callis family story is really starting to bloom at this point. It was a storyline that was totally stilted for months until All In, and ever since it has been flourishing. It's another great example of it. Yeah, there's a lot going on here.
I would complain a little bit about WWE, about like the Judgment Day. I love the Judgment Day.
Yeah.
But I kind of feel like they're just running in circles.
Yeah, I think them winning the tag team titles gave them a little bit more life, but I feel like this is the difficult thing that I mean, I'm going to talk out of my ass right now, but like, if I'm being an armchair booker, this is, I think, the hard choices that a good booking has to make. Like, you've got to take these wonderful, amazing things and know when to kill them. Like, you've got to know when Roman Reigns should lose the title, WrestleMania 39. You've got to know when it makes sense to, like, break up the Judgment Day because the story is going to get stale. You can go back in the day, like, I wasn't a big WCW watcher, so I can't really weigh in on this, but from what I've heard and read, the NWO storyline went on way too long, and it went from being potentially the greatest wrestling storyline of the 90s to, like, one of the worst by the time it was over.
Right, because they end up doing, like, NWO White, NWO Red, and
yeah,
it broke up like 4 more times. Everyone was NWO.
Yeah, and there is some stuff that manages to have a long shelf life and it works. I would say Degeneration X is a good example of that. But, like, you just gotta, I mean, a time comes when no matter how bankable it is, the right choice for the long-term story is to kill it. And I feel like we're at a point right now with Judgment Day where the timing might be right. Like, if they go another year, no one's going to remember the Judgment Day as awesome like they will if they were to end it in the near future.
I don't know if you need to kill it. Maybe just...
or totally change it, right?
It's something... It's crazy to think. Edge, Adam Copeland, started the Judgment Day.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's not... he's long gone.
Yeah. And I don't know what happened there. Like, they booted him out. I remember when they booted him out and I was really bummed about it. Like, I remember thinking, like, oh, that was such a dumb choice. Whose choice was that? But it ultimately worked out. Like, a credit to the members of the Judgment Day. They didn't need the veteran to prop them up. They were able to do it without him. But yeah, it would be nice to see, like, the Judgment Day is now, and they're waiting. This is something, here's a WWE does this thing that always irks me. And I don't want to say AEW never does it. I'm not going to say that because I don't know for sure. But I can't think of a time, at least recently, that they have done it. And that is, like, WWE will often do these like backstage videos where it's like a camera's there, where in reality there would be no camera there, right? Like there wouldn't be a camera sitting in Roman Reigns' dressing room overhearing the conversations of the bloodline. Like that wouldn't happen. And that's starting to do that with the Judgment Day now, right? Like now the Judgment Day is sitting around having a meeting and the camera's there and you're actually seeing like more vulnerable sides of them. And to me, it's like, I don't need to see this. Like if you want them to look vulnerable, show it through their character work. Like show it, don't have them say it. But, yeah, Iron Grudge in the chat saying interviews should be in the front of the audience. I think, yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm all for backstage segments. I just feel like they should like pay a little bit more attention to kayfabe, and that they should be like, somebody's been like accosted by a backstage interviewer, or they're cutting a promo backstage and stuff happens. I'm all for that stuff. That's great. It's just the times when like, why would the camera be here, that it gets a little weird.
Yeah, I agree. And I tell you what bothers me more than any of that is when Paul Heyman will grab his phone and like call Roman Reigns.
Call Roman Reigns.
And the phone is clearly turned off.
Oh, I haven't noticed that.
And there's been a few times where he like walking out of the crowd and there's be someone in the crowd yelling, "It's not on." That annoys me. That breaks the immersion of kayfabe for me. I'm like, oh man.
Did you see? It didn't show up on TV, but it went viral on Twitter. I guess Ricky Starks had a fight with Bryan Danielson. I don't know if it was like last week or a couple weeks ago, but they had a fight on Collision, and it looked fine on TV. But from certain angles, it looked like he hit Bryan Danielson's leg with the chair, but the chair actually hit the post to make it really loud. And so somebody caught on video it from a certain angle where you could clearly see that the chair didn't even touch Bryan Danielson.
I didn't see that.
And somebody near the guy holding the phone yells to Ricky Starks, "That looks so fake." Like somebody yelled it. And Ricky Starks turns to the guy and he's like, "Oh, you mean like your wife's orgasms?"
I like him a lot.
And
I really like Ricky.
And that doesn't show up on TV, but then if you watch that exact part on TV, you can see Ricky Starks hit the chair and then turn and yell something. It doesn't show up on TV. And then you hear one of the ring announcers being like, Ricky Starks is having an exchange with someone in the audience. Yeah, no, it was all right.
So should we talk about the big news?
Yeah, let's talk about the big news. The big news, we all know it. Adam Copeland is all elite, and he in the best possible way. And so a couple quick things. He is a full-time hire. The media scrum immediately after. I haven't seen all of it, but I did see the Adam Copeland segment. And Tony Khan did announce that like this is not he is going to generally be there every week. He'll be wrestling often. Tony Khan put it, he'll be wrestling at a pace which we haven't seen from him in years. So it sounds like he's going to be a full-timer. Like he's not going to be doing a match every 3 months like he was with WWE. And as a matter of fact, he put a lengthy post on X, a 4-parter. I'm going to read it, and then we're going to talk about it. Because I think this is, I don't know about you guys. I think if you're a wrestling nerd, like the things that you picked up when you see is like, oh, wow, he got his song. How he got his song? Oh, he's still the Rated R superstar. He's not Edge, but he's still the Rated R superstar. And so, like, how does that work? Anyways, so he wrote, I'm going to quote, I'm not going to paraphrase, but I'm not going to read every single sentence. I guess that's paraphrasing. As some of you may know, I'm no longer with WWE. My new home is AEW. I'm excited. Whole new roster, some familiar faces that I wanted to work with again, and a whole set of first ever matches, new challenges, and if you follow my career, you know that's what I've always been driven by. But first and foremost, I want to address my 25 years with the WWE. I love WWE and appreciate everything the company did for me. Always have, always will. They put me on the map, gave me amazing opportunities, and through hard work on both ends, I've been supplied with a wonderful life. Hell, WWE helped me meet the woman I'd start my family with. Sometimes relationships just grow apart, and I feel the WWE and I have just outgrown each other. I wanted to do more. They didn't have much for me to do. Simple as that. And that's okay. I'll still be watching and supporting all my friends there. I don't buy into this odd mentality of one company or the other. It's weird. If you took offense to that, take a walk, get some fresh air, and soak up some sunshine. It's wrestling. An amazing gig, but still, it's wrestling. Relax. It's supposed to be fun. And it's just a segment of the fans, not most fans, and definitely not the performers within the industry. Within the industry, we all know that more choices is better for everyone and pushes us all to be better. As a wrestling fan, which I still am, it's exciting that there's viable companies providing wrestling on national and worldwide platforms. If you're actually a fan of wrestling and not acronyms, that should make you happy too. I guess what I'm trying to say is this. If you've appreciated my work, you still can, no matter what the initials are. Because I'll still be busting my ass every time I'm out there. This ride isn't over just yet. Just try to have fun like it should be, because trust me, I'll be having fun every time I'm out there in an AEW ring. Let's go. I love the tone of this. I love the tone of him during the media scrum. He seems very excited with where he's at right now. And I love that I just more of this. I think Kenny Omega, it's not in our notes here, but he was accosted. Like someone tried to get him to comment on Jade Cargill leaving, betraying AEW or whatever. And he had a response that was in a very similar tone of just like, we wish her well. Like we like wrestlers. I'm not speaking for wrestlers. I'm quoting what Kenny Omega, or I'm paraphrasing what Kenny Omega said about wrestlers. It's like wrestlers they're happy for each other to get work and get opportunities. It's good. And I think that this is important. Like we as fans need to be this way too. Yes, we have our favorite flavors of wrestling, but it's really good for all of our favorite flavors that the other flavors are there. And I just, it's fine. I think it's fine to like have fun and like criticize other brands or say what you like about this brand. But at the end of the day, like to actually want the other brand to fail is really weird. I don't get that at all.
Yeah. Look, I talk a lot about AEW, but at the end of the day, they are a good thing it's good for them because when they do good, wrestling does good, which makes WWE do good.
Yeah.
And my light turned off. That is bad podcasting.
Tell me about it.
I'm not going to lie. I was a little saddened when he left because it's like, oh man, he was a lifer, kind of like, I'm a Dallas Maverick fan. We had Dirk Nowitzki forever. It's cool when a guy lasts in a company forever.
Yeah.
So there's a part of me that's like, oh, he was always a WWE guy. But I do know that a couple months ago, whatever, there was a comment about he wanted one more title run, and they just weren't giving it to him.
They didn't have one for him. And I think that it's like he wants to do more than they want to do with him. And here's his opportunity. And I think, yeah.
Which I get. I mean,
I wish they would let him have his name. We've talked about this in the show before. Like, really, WWE, you can't let this dude have his name. I know he's going to your competition, but you don't need him. Like, you don't have work for him. So what's the big deal?
No, I agree. I understand where they're coming from because, hey, it's our business. It's our name. But it would be cool. I mean, just come on. It was nice when Cody Rhodes was able to come to WWE with being Cody Rhodes still.
Yeah. I did see, I read something that apparently Adam Copeland filed trademarks for a whole bunch of like the Iconoclast, the Rogue, like a bunch of apparently Rated R Superstar is not trademarked by anybody, so he took it. Which what I think what's interesting about that is that superstar is a trademark term.
Right.
So, but I guess he can get away with the Rated R Superstar.
But I just hope, I don't know how full time he can really be over there. I know they say he's supposed to be full time.
Yeah, we'll see.
He is 50. I know 49, but he's 50 years old.
Well,
there's some.
Sorry, go ahead.
Good. I just think there's so many good matches he can have over there that I haven't seen before, or I mean, anyone's never seen him fight or wrestle. It'd be real fun to watch.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, who knows? Maybe he's got a lot of gas in the tank, but I would imagine he's probably gonna kind of go like Christian Cage has. Like Christian Cage shows up every week, but he doesn't actually wrestle that often,
Right.
right? Like he does wrestle. Like it's not like once every 3 months. He probably wrestles on average once a month, right?
Yeah.
But he's there every week. I could see that being kind of where he's at. All right. Well, I don't know about anyone here in the chat. I said earlier, like I think WrestleDream is. I messaged this to Tex and Colt today. WrestleDream is the new WrestleMania. No hyperbole.
And I sent ... because
This
he's
show,
ridiculous.
this show was so good. If anyone out there, if you haven't seen this show, you're insane. Like you've got to watch this show. It was so good. The storytelling leading up to it, the storytelling within it, the variety, the you had this like highly technical match, you had the high flying matches, you had Julia Hart and Chris Statlander. That match was awesome. And
What I was so critical of Julia Hart like 3 months ago because I thought she was pointless. And I don't know what's been going on with her lately, but last like month, she's been on fire.
yeah, she's popping off.
Yeah.
Yeah, she wasn't even wrestling that much. She was kind of more of a manager.
Right.
And now, I mean, I would have put the belt on her. That was if I had one critique of that entire show, I don't think a belt changed hands.
No, no, because Eddie Kingston won, right?
Eddie won, FTR won, MJF won.
No,
Yeah.
that's fair. I always say there's always one, but
Yeah.
I guess not.
I mean, it's a good rule. I think it's a rule that like you should feel free to break that rule when it's a better story to break the rule. But I actually think it would have been good timing to put the TBS belt on Julia Hart. I think that Chris Statlander has had a good run, and I don't know that there's much more that she can do with this run, so she should pass the belt. It is a mid card belt. Like it doesn't need to be on people for super long, and she's had it since May. I think that's a fine run for that belt.
It is tough because I mean, even WWE have a problem with this. It's so hard to get a title off somebody and still keep their push alive.
Yeah. Well, I think that like I don't know. There's ways to do it. Like Darby Allin lost last night in a way that like it doesn't hurt him at all to lose the way he lost. And there's things that they could do like that, right? Like Julia Hart's a heel. She could have won with a heel move.
I also want to give Darby Allin some credit. It looks like he gained 7-8 pounds.
I was gonna say both Darby Allin and Sammy Guevara look like they've put on some muscles since we first started this podcast when we were kind of paying close attention to them.
Thank God, especially Darby Allin. He's the smallest person I've ever seen. So I have a question. It's kind of going back to Edge, Adam Copeland, whatever. I'm going to keep calling him Edge because he's Edge to me.
I get it.
Edge or Jade Cargill? They both switch. Which one's the better get? Who won this bidding war? Was it WWE getting a Jade or was AEW getting Edge?
I'll tell you who won this bidding war. The fans.
Oh God. All right, Coltrane. Jeez Louise.
You know, it's tough because I actually think Adam Copeland's a massive get for AEW and Jade Cargill's a massive get for WWE. You know what I mean? Like they're both moving to I think places that they're going to excel better than where they were. So
I agree. I think a short-term Edge is probably the better because he has the name and the value. But I think long-term, if they do Jade Cargill, if they treat her kind of like Cody Rhodes, just launch her up the card where she should be, she has a long career ahead of her, which
Yeah,
could be.
the one kind of X factor, and I'm not saying this, I'm not critiquing her skill because I don't know where she's at, but she said herself, like during her TBS championship run, that she felt she was green and and she knows that they kind of put her into a title scene too early, like early in her career, and that she's got a lot of learning to do. And we did see her improve over the course of her run, but I'd be interested to know, like, she hasn't really seriously wrestled since May. What's she been doing this time? Has she been training? Like, is she coming back as a
Mhm.
like more like better than ever, or has she like literally been on the shelf for the last few months? Like, I'd be my inclination when I heard she was going to WWE is like, oh man, the smart move would be to put her in NXT first. You got all the time in the world with this woman. You don't need to push her to the moon right away, but she could use more training. But maybe she doesn't. Maybe she's been training. And like I said, these are in her, even she said this. This is not me, you know, being an armchair critic.
I I personally would like her to come out like the woman Brock Lesnar and just mollywop all these women and just be a big brute, and all these women just like, I don't know what to do, can't handle it, and just run shop on everybody.
I mean, if you're
And Paul
gonna
Heyman to be our manager.
if you're gonna book this, so you want to put her on the main roster, like, does she win Royal Rumble? Like, is that like, do you put her like that high up right away, or
I mean, if you could do it right, where it's kind of like she could be a surprise Royal Rumble winner, that'd be really cool.
yeah? Well, I mean, do you think they might do that? Might they like keep
I mean,
her in
it's
the
not that far.
keep her
Why
training for
not?
the next few months? It
Why
might be a good
not?
idea. I feel like they're gonna use her sooner than later, or they wouldn't be doing all this press with her, though.
True.
I guess
I
we'll
mean,
see.
I mean, I like that idea. Her first match be the Royal Rumble. I mean, the Royal Rumble is only
Yeah.
2 months away.
I feel like if they were gonna do that, the smart money move though would have been to keep quiet about it, right? Like, you want it to be a
Mhm.
big surprise in Royal Rumble.
That's not. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I
But
still
yeah.
think. I still think Braun Breaker is gonna win,
Oh my god.
but or Randy Orton. Tell me you don't think Randy's gonna at least show up on
He
the
could very well
Rumble.
show up. I'm not gonna say he's not gonna show up, but I got just everything in my gut tells me it's got to be Cody Rhodes that wins the Royal Rumble. Like, at some
I
point.
think that's why he has to lose.
No. That was the mentality that they took into WrestleMania 39,
Yeah,
and
still
it's
you gotta
like,
keep
okay,
going with it.
no, you like at some point, WWE, you got to give the win. And like, I think we can all agree. I think that most people who are excited about the Bloodline storyline, and if it's their favorite storyline in all of wrestling, I think whether they can admit it or not, deep down they know that this story was light years better like 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah.
And it has gone way downhill, and they could have just paid it off so spectacularly at the show of shows, the grandest stage of them all. And now we're just sitting here like,
You're not wrong.
uh,
I don't disagree with it to the point. I it I still think they could capture the magic in the bottle of the first one. But it really has to they really have to nail it from that the whatever you call the prime season between Royal Rumble and the WrestleMania. I don't think Cody has to win it.
so here's what I think they should do. And I don't know when the timing is, but we're getting close to when the time is right. So Cody Rhodes got Jey Uso to come over to Raw, and there's going to be a mystery person traded back to
Right. And
SmackDown.
it keeps getting interrupted before he
Keeps getting
talks about it.
interrupted. It's got to be Cody Rhodes, right? Cody Rhodes trades himself back to SmackDown to finish the story.
Uh, The good thing about that is you could get Cody going against other people and keep him on the keep him going for a little while because he is kind of not doing much on Raw right now. He just kind of shows up and helps beat up
There's
the Judgment Day.
there's a weird I like the Raw the Raw roster overall better than I like the SmackDown roster, but there is a weird thing that's sort of happening in Raw right now where it's like there's these like 4 or 5 good guys that don't, aside from KO and Sami Zayn, the rest of them actually don't really have anything in common with each other, but they all keep teaming up to fight the Judgment Day in one way or
Yeah, it's
another
kind of
every week.
every week.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
something's got to get mixed up there, but
Yeah, I
we'll
agree.
see.
And
Yeah.
who knows? It might. I don't know. I haven't watched Raw or anything about it because we record.
Yeah.
Judgment Day could be mad at Dom for losing, so that could set a storyline. That would be nice.
And there is these seeds of like, what's the guy that keeps trying to join them? Finn's buddy.
Oh, I forgot his name.
Yeah.
Damian Priest hates him though.
Yeah. He like yelled at him last week that
Yeah.
like you're not in the Judgment Day. You never will be. I feel like that's potentially a catalyst for a rift in the team, right?
Right.
Because Finn's gonna potentially back his boy. JD McDonough. Thank you, Aaron Gridge.
Yes. Yes.
Which I'm ready for. I'm ready for it. Like, let's break up the Judgment Day or rebuild it, a different version of it. Like maybe Finn gets kicked out. Maybe Jay does get talked into joining the Judgment Day. I don't know. But
I'm so excited because we're getting so close to that. Like I said, the prime season or the time for WWE, like it starts at Royal Rumble. For those 3 months afterwards, is just the best wrestling for the year, and I'm so excited.
I
And like you said, AEW is doing great right now too, and I imagine they're just going to keep doing good.
here's my WrestleDream Tex is that I think between all, so like I feel like the first half of the year should belong to WWE when they bring out their best shows, and the second half should belong to AEW when they bring out their best shows. Because I think that like all in, all out, WrestleDream in full gear, like that's going to be the lineup moving forward for the late summer and fall for AEW. And I feel like that's usually when they bring out their best stuff. But
I agree. Now, one of our chat is asking, can someone take the Money in the Bank briefcase? Yes, they can. It has happened before, but I love Damian Priest. I don't know where they're going to go with the Money in the Bank. I don't know who he would cash it on, when. I don't know anything.
I
feel like he could have already cashed it on Rollins. And I think that's the only one that makes it. But
I feel like he's going to take that belt off Rollins. They're just waiting for the time to be right. That's what makes sense to me. But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think like in kayfabe, I know that like it's WWE and they've made up stuff to suit their purposes here and there. But I think in kayfabe, the Money in the Bank, like you can't just like jump Damian Priest and steal the briefcase and now it's yours, right?
right, you would have
But
to
you could have a match for
win
it.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
If Damian agreed to put it up.
If I remember correctly, the second time Edge had the briefcase, Mr. Kennedy won it, but Edge took it because he got hurt or something like that. And that's how he did it. He wrestled for it and won it.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, 18 Wheeling, they can kind of change the rules whenever they want to suit the story they want to tell.
Yeah.
WWE doesn't get too they don't get too caught up in the logic of it.
That's true. Now, I know an AEW, which is I hear non-AEW fans talk a lot about, is the injuries. AEW has some big injuries.
Yeah, man, Adam Cole broke his ankle in 3 places.
Is that real?
I think it's real. And I think that if it was, I mean, it's possible that it's not. I don't know. Did you see how Dynamite ended this week by any chance?
Is that the masked guy?
The masked group jumping Jay White.
I did see that.
And one of them was wearing MJF's devil mask. And apparently, I didn't even spot this, but I was reading, apparently the last time that devil mask is seen on Dynamite is some scene where MJF and Adam Cole are hanging out in their locker room, and the mask is on with Adam Cole's gear. It's not with MJF's gear. So they
If that's
definitely,
true,
yeah,
and it I don't know if it's been a couple weeks before that happened, that is pretty great storytelling to put that Easter egg in there.
yeah. So it's possible that it's if it's fake. There's some really interesting stuff here that like it's kind of a crazy choice if it's a work because Britt Baker, Adam Cole's real life girlfriend, shared a picture of the injured foot on social media. So that would mean that they actually like either sourced a photo of an injured foot, like they're actually like actively lying and posting fake images of an injured foot, right?
Right.
Possible,
Possible.
but it's not like AEW posted this. His spouse posted this, right?
Right. Right.
The other thing is the injury happened at an awful time for like the week before the pay-per-view, and it didn't happen like it was a total fluke. It didn't even happen in a match. Like he just like hopped off a ramp and then started hobbling. Like it was a totally wild fluke. So it would be like it wasn't destructive, and like he didn't sell the injury when it happened. They had to like just the more astute people noticed that he was hobbling a bit, and then a week later they admitted that he was injured, right? Like they didn't even comment on it for a week. So there's a lot of weird choices that they would be making if this is a work. But it's possible.
Now, there is a chance. I kind of feel like it's fake. I don't know. I keep coming back to it. I
It'd
think
be
it's
amazing
fake.
if it was fake.
I just I really I mean they're doing really good this storyline. I even if I don't watch AEW, I still like I wonder what's going on with Adam Cole and MJF. And that's all I mean, you even if I'm not watching, I'm one of the millions of people watch on YouTube that those segments they have. They're great.
Yeah. Yeah,
But how long can they keep that going
I don't know,
before they have to break it up?
and like if it's a real injury, and if he really did break his ankle in 3 places, like he's gonna be on the shelf for months, right?
Yeah.
So what are they gonna do with that? I don't know. Like they can't hold these titles. Like they did it once. MJF like he defended the titles yesterday in a handicap match, but they can't keep doing that. Like they're gonna
Okay.
lose those belts.
Now I know this isn't who it is, but what if it's CM Punk?
I mean, if it was like the most ultimate 2 years in the making work, like that would be amazing.
Hey, who knows?
That would be amazing.
Probably not, though.
It's not.
I could probably safely say it's not CM Punk.
I mean, it could be. I mean, like the they want you to think it's Adam Cole. We know they want us to think it's Adam Cole. So the question is, do they want us to think it's Adam Cole because it's Adam Cole, or is that a red herring?
Right. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it is MJF. Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe it's MJF. Maybe and then who are the other guys? Is it like Adam Cole? Is it the Kingdom and Roderick Strong, the people that like we know hate MJF but are mad at Adam Cole for liking him? I don't know.
Could be them just trying to set up Adam Cole to get him back. To get MJF mad at him so he comes back to them.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do love a good wrestling whodunit though. It's been a while.
Oh, remember, what was the old one? Rikishi ran over Stone Cold.
I don't even remember that. I don't remember that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was supposed to be someone else. They got fired or whatever. So they're like, Rikishi did it. And they're like, actually, it was Triple H. The Iron Grudge remembers that. Yeah. It's when Stone Cold had like a broken neck, whatever. So he had to go away for a while. So like, we'll run you over.
Okay, that actually starts to ring a bell a bit for me.
Yeah. Good times.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. So Adam Cole's injured. Darby Allin might be injured. He took the most insane bump onto steel stairs last night. It did not look safe at all. It also looked like Christian Cage's strength was failing him. Like he was struggling to lift Darby Allin, and I don't think he threw him the way it was intended. It looked bad.
Well, I mean, that's why you shouldn't let someone who's 50 years old pick you up.
Well, like you said, maybe Christian Cage didn't realize he gained 7 pounds.
He's like, whoa, dude. Good point. That's why Dario was like, look, I should have lost all the weight.
Yeah.
Because when I watched it, he did like pick him up and like, whoa, and then dropped him.
Yeah, he like tried one. He failed once, and then he tried
Yeah.
again, right? And it looked like he was changing his strategy while holding Darby Allin. It almost looked like.
Yeah, it didn't look good. It looked bad.
Yeah. So unknown if Darby Allin's going to be seriously injured, but he reportedly had his arm in a sling after the match and went to a medical facility afterwards. So who knows? Ray Phoenix was injured during the 8-man tag, the 4-way tag match.
I heard that it might have been actually because he was the one that fought Moxley, right?
Yeah.
And I heard it might have been from that.
I think I saw he said like old injuries are it wasn't like a fresh injury, but something that got aggravated during that match. I didn't actually see how he got injured, but he like actually left the match partway through the match.
Yeah.
And then I haven't actually read anything about it, but watching FTR versus Aussie Open, I was certain that Cash Wheeler injured his ribs. They landed a weird power bomb and I think it's Kyle Fletcher from Aussie Open. His knee dug into Cash Wheeler's ribs. And then Cash was like holding his ribs the whole time. And I thought it was just like part of the storytelling of the match. But then like as the match went on, he developed this huge welt right where he was holding. So I was like, oh, is it for real? I don't know. I haven't heard anything about it, but I just noticed that watching the match.
I hope that's not the side he keeps his gun.
Oh dear.
Shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
Edit that out.
Nah. All right. Folks, we're going to have a little fun. It is a bit of a, we had this plan. For those of you that tuned in last week, you have this plan that we were going to start talking about the Montreal Screwjob, and we are going to pick that up next week. But we are without Coltrane this week, and we don't want to start that without him because it's largely for his benefit. So let's face it, we're just going to do some filler this episode. No, I'm kidding. We're going to just do a little something different, something a little fun. And we're just going to, there's often like a bit of a kind of a B plot on this podcast of Tex and I are throwing barbs at who we think is the best and why the other person's wrong. And then we move on. Well, today we're not going to move on. We're going to get into it. And we're not really sure where this is going to go. We don't have a big structure to the episode, but we just thought let's dig into a bit. I thought it might be fun to start with some Mount Rushmores. And folks in the chat, if you want to throw out your Mount Rushmores, you're welcome to, and we'll try to read them. But for those of you who don't know, like the Mount Rushmore of wrestling, the idea is, there's 4 presidents on Mount Rushmore, right? Is it 4 presidents? I'm Canadian. I don't know. There's 4 of them, right?
Oh, man. I thought it was 4. We're going to say 4. Let's say 4.
Maybe 4. So you got to pick your 4. Well, I think I've seen some renders of adding Donald Trump, so that would make it 5.
There you go.
So 4. You gotta, who's your 4? The idea is like the 4 great, like if you could only pick 4 wrestlers to be carved into stone as representative of all of wrestling, who would it be? Now, there's many ways you could interpret this, like your personal choice, who you think is the greatest, who you think is the most influential, whatever. So I think we're going to start with just the greatest. And this can mean, I guess it can mean whatever you want it to mean, and we can argue about what it should mean. But like, who's your Rushmore? And I got to be honest, I spent some time before this episode thinking about it. I'm not 100% who my Rushmore is, but I have some thoughts. Who do you go with?
Are we just picking 1, or we're picking 4?
Let's name. Do you have? Yeah, who's your number 1? Who's definitely on there?
My number 1, the greatest wrestler of all time, is The Undertaker.
Interesting. The Undertaker.
He's not my personal. He is one of my personal favorites, but I think he His he's been on the top of the business for over 30 years. He always, if he's not 1A, he's always been 1B.
Mhm.
His whole time.
I
He's always been the locker room leader. For everyone always talks about how much no one had more respect in the locker room than him. And let's be serious. I know we talk about one of the greatest gimmicks ever. Let's be serious. That is the dumbest gimmick in the history of wrestling almost. An undead Undertaker who has killed his family and burned his brother in the fire. I mean, no one else would have made that work but Mark. So that's why I think he's the greatest.
I gotta be honest, like I'm not 100% sure he would make my Mount Rushmore. He's on my list. I think it's a worthy. I wouldn't argue against that choice, but he's on my maybe list.
I it is hard because
It's hard. Four is almost impossible.
Four is hard. So who would the greatest be for you?
I think for me, and again, I think I would disclaim this similar to what you said. Like I'm not saying he's my favorite of all time, but I just like respecting his game. I think Ric Flair's got to be on the Mount Rushmore.
I would. It would be hard not to put him in the top four. I guess the only like knock on him would be like his later career. He's kind of just been kind of almost ugly to watch.
It's because he changed his hairstyle.
That's it. And I don't know if you saw that last match he had. I think it was last year.
No, I heard about it, but I didn't actually watch it.
I was afraid he's going to die in the middle of the match. But I think, and to think of all the stuff he's been through, I mean, he literally was in a plane crash.
Yeah.
Broke his back, and they told him he'd never wrestle again. And being able to completely change his style. And let's be serious, he's not a great worker, as like he's not exciting. So for people to get so excited watching him, is he had to be able to sell himself, and he did that better than anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, his promos are. I mean, everyone knows a Ric Flair promo. So
woo, yeah,
I don't, yeah,
Flair, yeah, it's Flair, right? And I mean, it's interesting you bring up like his later years. It does beg a question, like, should it count against him that he had like a bunch of bad matches later on in life when he really should have retired, or is that exactly what the perfect wrestler does? like how many great wrestlers just stay way longer than they should and have lots of bad matches before they finally call it?
I mean, he did have, there's periods in his career where, I mean, he wasn't doing anything good before Evolution, however it's said.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was kind of just floating around in WWE, in WCW. So, but I mean, to be able to be that low, then be able to come back it's pretty more remarkable what he's done with his career. And was it 16-time world champion?
16-time world champion.
Which I think I don't know if anyone will ever beat that.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, yeah, he's like one of those guys where it's like, yeah, he's just there. Like it feels like to me like, yeah, he's on the mountain. Like he's just there.
Yeah.
So really now I got to figure out the other three because he's there. Like so. Okay. Well, do you have a second pick?
So I don't really care for him, but I think it'd be hard not to put him on here. Would be John Cena.
He's not on my list, dude.
And I wouldn't put him for his wrestling skills. I would put him for his promos, and just because he carried the whole wrestling business for 15 years. And let's be serious, in that 15 years or so, wrestling was really bad, and he was the only one that could do anything.
I'd say in a world where you're putting up a dozen, he's probably on there, but he's not on my short list. But I do have a compromise idea for you.
Okay, I like it.
You say he's the fifth guy, but you don't carve his face in. You
You
can't
just
see
leave
him.
it blank.
You
I
can't
like
see.
it. You know what? There we go. He's the fifth guy.
He's the fifth guy, but
our
he's not
Donald
carved
Trump.
into the
I
mountain.
like it. I like it.
Uh,
So, who would you put?
my second choice. Okay. This is where, honestly, from here on in, I have one more choice that I think has to go on there, and then it gets really hard. And then my second choice is Stone Cold Steve Austin. I think he is the face of the Attitude Era, and the Attitude Era is the greatest era in all of wrestling, in my opinion. And it here's why it complicates things, because in my heart of hearts, I want to put The Rock on Mount Rushmore, and I don't think there's room for two from the Attitude Era. And if I'm saying who's my favorite wrestler of all the Attitude Era, it's either The Rock or Chris Jericho. But it's probably The Rock if I'm looking at just that era. But even then, I still think between The Rock and Steve Austin, it's got to be Steve Austin going on the mountain.
So, I'm not going to be the guy who's come in here and tell you that's a bad pick, because how can you not put Stone Cold? I mean, the wrestling was the biggest when Stone Cold was the guy on top. There's no ends if or buts about it. He's the biggest draw in wrestling.
His
And
feud with Vince McMahon is probably the greatest feud ever.
yes. And I know the argument's like, well, his run on the top wasn't that long. But as short as it was, he's still the number one selling shirts almost all the time, or in the top 10. He's still a household name. Everyone knows Stone Cold. My kid, who's never watched a match before, knows who Stone Cold Steve Austin is.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be so hard not to put him in there. So I agree. And the reason I put him over The Rock is because The Rock doesn't do much for wrestling now. I know he was just on the other day,
Yeah.
but for the most part, he kind of left wrestling behind.
Yeah.
And Stone Cold is still here. He still does interviews with people. He still shows up. He's still just involved in the whole ecosystem. So I
The
love that pick.
I think when it's all said and done, The Rock will be better remembered as Dwayne Johnson than The Rock,
I
right?
agree.
Like, which great for him. Like, definitely not knocking The Rock in terms of like having an incredibly successful life, one of the most successful lives on the planet, frankly. But in terms of pure wrestling, he made a choice at one point to like go a different direction, go into movies, and it was a really great choice because he made a ton of money and he's awesome at it. But the cost of that is he doesn't get to be on the mountain.
I agree.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with everything you just said there. Stone Cold. I mean, Stone Cold.
It's
Enough
Stone Cold.
said.
Okay, now I think let's get
So-
into it.
So this one's
We've got the
tough.
formalities out of the way, I feel.
This one's tough for me because I think I would have you have to put someone up there for his technical wrestling, because everyone else mostly goes for personality, and for me the most technical bad ace, stock myself, wrestler is Kurt Angle, and I don't even think it's close.
I mean, I don't know that he's the best technical wrestler or not. I just think he has no business being on that mountain.
I
love Kurt
100%
Angle.
disagree. He, from day one, the second he joined his company, he was a top guy. And until the day he left, he was a top guy. Even if it wasn't in WWE because of substance,
Dude,
he was still a top guy in
I'm not
TNA
even
when TNA was good.
I'm not even sure he makes the Mount Rushmore of the Attitude Era.
How dare he? He has to be in
He's in
there
contention for that,
Attitude
but I'm
Era.
not sure he makes it.
I think he's the best technical wrestler ever in the WWE. I see the Bret Hart argument. I and it's just
What about
because
Danielson?
my age. I think Danielson's good too, but I just Kurt with his size and the way he was able to manipulate people and to do it so quickly into the business, and he was a star from day one. The first promo he did, he became a star. So much so that they tried to copy that formula, and he's never worked since.
I'm not denying that he's an awesome wrestler. I just think like this is not
No.
where he
And
goes.
this the Kurt one is my personal, like, this is the one, like,
Okay, so you're putting your personal touch, but I mean like
this is my personal
because
one,
I feel like
yes.
my personal Mount Rushmore is very different than the Mount Rushmore I'm presenting to you right now.
Yeah, this is just that one pick where I would, like, if I had to put my personal feelings into one, it would be Kurt Angle in there.
All right. That's
I mean,
a
the milk
garbage
truck.
choice, but I feel bad saying that because I do love Kurt Angle. What are you talking about?
It's okay because you're about to say someone, I have a feeling, and I'm about to shoot him down too. So get ready.
I
Go
know who
ahead and
you're
say
thinking of, but not yet. We're
it.
So I struggle because at this point I started to think, okay, do we need to include someone from the old timer era? Like
Ric Flair.
pre-80s, like Flair, like the olden days, like the early days. I feel like if we do, then I have a choice, but if we don't, I'm content not to.
The only reason I would say no, it's just we just don't know enough about him.
That's
don't.
fair. That's fair. Like I would say like to me I would argue against putting Bruno Sammartino on there. I know he's the longest reigning champion ever, but that's all there is to the guy. I'm sure he's great, but I'll give an honorable. If this isn't going to be. If we're not going to do it, then this isn't my submission. But if we were going to, I was going to nominate Superstar Billy Graham, just because basically he's the first ever heel to get over with an audience. He's like every heel ever based on him, but we can move on. Okay. This is where it's hard because I know who my fourth is and I know who my first and second are. This third one is very difficult for me. It's very difficult. Let me see here. I said Stone Cold. I said Ric Flair. I think I gotta put Bret Hart. The Hitman Bret Hart is on my Mount Rushmore.
I don't hate it. Especially because, I mean, you're a little biased there.
I am biased.
Canadian.
I live in Calgary. I ate dinner at his bar last night.
I mean, that would help. That would help. Was it good?
It was really good, actually. And we met the Canadian Goose. That's where I met
yes,
the independent wrestler. I forgot to mention this off the top of the show. I met these awesome guys. They were there hosting a trivia. How cool is this? Everyone, I want you to just let's pause this Mount Rushmore. Think about your life. Think about the choices you've made, what you're doing with your life. Now don't even imagine, just know, because it's not a fiction, it's real, that there are a couple dudes, 2 or 3 guys, I don't know their whole story, I'm just learning about them, out of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, I met them, I didn't ask them their age, but they appeared to me to be late 20s, early 30s, young guys by my standards. And they love wrestling, and they were there doing a trivia show, and I was like, hey, yeah, they have this website or YouTube page called Love Wrestling. You can look it up. Love Wrestling. That's what it's called. They're on all socials. Love Wrestling. I looked and I was like, hey, I thought, because they told me they have a podcast. I was like, hey, I went there to look at your podcast. You guys have matches and stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, we started a wrestling promotion. I was like, what do you mean you started a wrestling promotion? They're like, yeah, we love wrestling. So we bought a wrestling ring and we produce wrestling shows. And I was like,
that's cool.
Well, how much is I asked how much is a wrestling ring? It was like about $10,000 Canadian. It was like,
it's like $25 here, right?
Yeah. It's probably around 7,000. But I was like, it just really gave me pause. I spent the whole night driving home thinking with my wife were out for dinner, and I was like, oh my God. You could get together with 4 or 5 buddies and put in a few grand each and start your own wrestling promotion.
Yeah.
You could just do that. Think about how much money that you spend on skiing or golf or whatever your hobby is. Like your hobby could be running a wrestling promotion. It's crazy.
But yeah. Yeah, especially if you're immature, because most of those guys, you're not really paying. You're just kind of giving them somewhere to do it at.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably throw them a bit of money and they'd be happier
Yeah.
than like,
Like stand up. Give you $5. There you
Yeah.
go. I like it.
Anyway, I would like to. I talked to them. I networked with them. They invited me to be on their trivia show one time, but I played their trivia game at the bar they did, and it was really effing hard. So I don't know if I want to be on their trivia show, but but I would like to have them on this show at some point. I'm going to follow up with them. We talked. I got their card, but I just want to learn a lot more about them before I invite this on the show because I don't want to insult their time. But anyways, I'm sorry. Total digression. Back to Mount Rushmore. Bret Hart. We were talking about Bret Hart. You think you don't hate the choice, but it sounds like it's not your choice.
So, actually, I've been watching a lot about Bret Hart in the last couple weeks, and I always kind of felt like he's been overrated. This probably because I was more of a Shawn Michaels guy, and let's be serious. For the last 15 years, Bret Hart's done nothing but complain and whine and complain more than whine some more. This is called what it is. But I was listening to interviews with him the other day, and he did get kind of screwed by everybody. And I do feel bad for him. I mean, WCW screwed him.
Yeah.
I mean, WWE screwed him with the whole Montreal screw job. Plus, I mean, he was supposed to be the guy, and they just
and it's really and we're gonna get really deep into this in the next few weeks. But like the real tragedy of it is that he didn't just get screwed, but he got screwed over as the one guy that was loyal. You know what I mean? That was like truly loyal to the cause. And
and then he has the head concussion, which is just awful, which leads to a seizure. And it's just like he just got the worst deal. Yeah. I don't want to say ever in wrestling because there's some guys, who got real bad deals, but he just kept getting screwed over. So I kind of like, I get why he's so salty about wrestling. I really do get it now.
And I might add this to our Montreal Screwjob program, but there's an amazing episode of Grillin' JR's podcast. Mm-hmm. There's a Montreal Screwjob episode from Jim Ross's perspective.
Oh, shocker. Everyone has one.
I know, but totally. But like, I got to say, it really affected my perspective on the whole thing, listening to his take. So might add it.
Now, I think Bret Hart is interchangeable with Shawn Michaels personally.
It is an either or. There's not room for both, but either they're the two faces of that era, right? And I'm just gonna lean Bret Hart personally, but
now I have to throw a name out here because we put John Cena to the side, and I'm not even sure I would put this guy in my top, but I would understand why people would put him. What do you think about Hulk Hogan?
Hulk Hogan's the trickiest name in the entire list because there's no denying that he's the most influential wrestler of all time.
Yep.
And I think that, I don't think you can even argue with that. And I don't care if somebody shows me numbers that Steve Austin's merch made more money. Hulk Hogan to this day is a household name. There are children that know who Hulk Hogan is. They don't know much about him, but they know his face. To me, here's my issue with Hulk Hogan and why he would not make my list, but he is on my short list, but he ultimately doesn't make my list because the people that I've chosen, I think for this kind of general view of Mount Rushmore, the people that I've chosen, I think are people that are major names in wrestling, but it also did a lot to build wrestling up and to carry wrestling. And Hulk Hogan did build wrestling, but that was a byproduct of building himself. Hulk Hogan was only ever about himself I think. Maybe I'm wrong. I've never met the guy, but it just seems to me that he really I think we can all agree, based on everything that's ever been told, that he had Vince's ear. He was demanding to get the belt. He was controlling storylines at the highest level because of to protect his profitability and his ego at the cost of how many greatest wrestlers of all time never got to be WWE champion or WWF champion at the time because Hogan had to have the belt, right? We
I
never
mean, yeah.
we never
Yeah.
got to see a Jake the Snake champion. Jake the Snake even told a story about how he was gonna be in that picture, but Hogan nixed it, right? So there's just so many. I mean, we could go down a list of all the wrestlers of the 80s that should have had a run as champion.
I mean, you hear about all these other people. I mean, if the Undertaker doesn't like you, and it seems like that's the guy who's the judge of character in the back. And if he don't like you, no one seems to like you.
Yeah.
And everyone seems Bret Hart everyone seems to have a story about how Hulk Hogan tried to screw him over or did screw him over. So it's hard. It's hard to put a guy in there who's so hated in the back.
Yeah, he ultimately doesn't make my list because of like his behind the scenes, the accounting of his character behind the scenes. But I mean, his influence is undeniable to the point that he has to be in the conversation. I'm glad you brought him up.
So, because we moved John Cena to the side because he's the fifth you can't see him guy, right? So that would leave me one more.
All right.
And this one is the fourth one's always hard because I could wait. I'll wake up tomorrow and be like, how did I forget that guy? Or how did I forget this guy? So bear with me. If it was up to me, my Mount Rushmore would be 26 guys, and your fourth pick would not be on there. This one, you have to go Triple H, and that's my pick. Triple H would be my fourth one. I think all these great wrestlers like Stone Cold, The Rock, and all of them, they all had one thing in common. One of their greatest rivals on all of them was Triple H. Triple H has been a constant in wrestling forever. I mean, he's now booking it.
Yeah.
I mean, married Stephanie to do that, but that's all right. He came up the right way. He was slowly built up. The company was on his back for a long time too, and some bad times. He's elevated talent. He has the worst WrestleMania record of all time because he does put people over. But I mean, he's also like a 14-time champion.
Yeah, I love Triple H, and I think that the only thing hurting Triple H's chances to get on my Mount Rushmore is that he came up during a time that Stone Cold came up. Like, I think that
I get that.
And I think that I might feel differently if I kept watching throughout his entire career. But he is on my short. He'd be a guy that is on my short list. But and maybe he might even be on my personal. Like, I love Triple H. I think he's just an awesome heel. But he's definitely on my Degeneration X Mount Rushmore.
I don't know. That's
it's basically not X-Pac. That's my Degeneration X Mount
Rushmore. I love
X-Pac,
dude. 1, 2, 3, kid, whatever. I love X-Pac. He's always one of my favorites.
Yeah. I got nothing. I'm not gonna fault you for putting Triple H on your Mount Rushmore. I do love him. I think that's a fine choice. It's not the choice. It's actually in some ways very similar to my fourth choice. But so who are you at right now? You've got, who'd you say? You got.
So I have Undertaker, Triple H. I don't remember the other two people. Jeez Louise.
Well, you don't have a fourth one yet.
Did I not have a fourth one?
Because you took John Cena off, right?
I took John Cena off.
Yeah, you put Kurt Angle on. That's so stupid.
Oh yeah, Kurt Angle. I still think Kurt. I mean,
no, but you agreed with Stone Cold, so maybe that is your
Stone
four.
Cold. Yeah.
So that's your four.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're full.
And now, I will say, if you notice my list, they all have something in common. They're all from the same period, and that is a little bit of my fault. But That's what I
gonna
grew
say
up
that they're all WWE guys. I
on.
think
Yeah.
are they all lifers? No, Kurt Angle's
Kurt now.
not. No, he had a long career after. Okay,
Yeah.
but they're all WWE guys, and
Yep.
I feel like Ric Flair had an amazing run in WWE, but I don't think of him as a WWE guy. I think of him as a WCW guy.
I could think of it like NWA guy because he was
Yeah,
back in that day.
yeah.
So
Okay, so my fourth choice, and I saved it for last because I think you're going to argue about it, is Chris Jericho. Come on, it's
okay.
Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho has to be on the Mount Rushmore because he's the GOAT.
Okay. Well, you gotta give me a reason he's the GOAT so I can shoot it down. I need a reason. Just give me a good reason.
I mean, he has competed at the highest level in essentially every promotion he's been with pretty much, and he's been with pretty much every promotion. He
So
has reinvented himself over the years.
Yes.
He has been a major player through multiple eras of wrestling, through multiple companies. He's the piece that connects it all together. And he's still doing it. He had a great match last night.
So my main argument would be even though he was a main eventer in WWE, he was never the guy. He would never, and that's at the end of the day, that's one of the reasons he left WWE because even WWE didn't feel like he was the guy, and he even admits it.
No, it's not even WWE didn't think he was the guy. It's only WWE didn't think he's the guy.
I would disagree.
Well, WCW as well.
WCW and WWE. Now he, like you said, he was the main event. I think he's great. I think if you want to put him on a list of top 75 people, sure. And I think the way he reinvents himself is amazing.
75.
Top 70, it is amazing, but he was just never the top guy. When his main run, you can never consider him the top.
You know what, Tex? You just made the list.
That might be the best character.
I don't know. It's like one of those things where it's like, yes, you could make the argument. Like, yes, his career is very different than like a Stone Cold or an Undertaker, or like yes, it's different, and it's what makes him the GOAT. Because for everybody that had this really top level run in one specific area, he had maybe not as high as them in that specific area, but he had high end, if not top end, runs everywhere. And to this day.
Okay, so my other argument with that would be yes, he's had a top run at AEW, and I agree
their
that's
first
awesome.
champion.
I agree
they
that's
banked
awesome.
on him,
but I don't know if I give you more credit for being the top guy of a promotion that isn't as big as the WWE.
Oh my god!
And if you want to use that argument, Jeff Jarrett has done the same thing.
But this is like but Jericho was in WCW, he was in WWE. I think he was in ECW. He was in New Japan. Was he in Impact? Was he in TNA? I think so.
I don't think so. He might do
sure.
I don't think so. Maybe one or two shows or something.
He did like I just gotta say, like, this guy it's like by being a top guy in one place, you couldn't possibly have the career he's had. And yes, AEW is not as big as WWE in 2023, but it doesn't matter because he was already holding 2 world championships in WWE. Was he the guy? Was he like the biggest guy? No, he wasn't. Like, Stone Cold was the biggest guy at that point, probably. But it was Jericho. He was the guy that united the titles, the WCW and WWE title.
So, like I said, if you want to use, because you went to other shows and were a top guy, Jeff Jarrett did it. There's other guys who's done it.
Jeff Jarrett. No, Jeff Jarrett didn't do
Jeff
it.
Jarrett even started his own promotion.
That's dude.
And
I started my own podcast. It doesn't make me Joe Rogan.
Argue what you want to do. I know you don't like numbers. TNA back in the day was getting bigger numbers than AEW. Now, it didn't last, but it lasted. I mean, it's technically still going.
I'm not here to take a dump on Jeff Jarrett. I'm just saying, like, he's not in the same ballpark as Chris Jericho.
I would disagree. And now, and the great, I hear it all the time. He beat Stone Cold. He beat The Rock. Iron Grey saw you seeing it. I saw you say it. But I even heard an interview with him. The only reason he got that is because they wanted to get those belts together, and they didn't want those two beating up each other. So they needed a middleman. And that's the only reason he had it.
It doesn't really matter whether that's true or not. The point is that they chose him. Like that's the point. Is like
I gave him a top 75.
Dude. Does he maybe have the greatest WWF debut ever? I don't know. Maybe he's in there.
When he interrupted The Rock, right? Is that what happens?
Yeah.
He interrupts The Rock.
Remember for like weeks or even months, they had the countdown. It would just randomly appear every episode of Raw, and everybody like,
that's cool.
What's JR be like? What is that? What's happening there?
That was cool. And look, I will give him some credit. Let me give him some credit. I'll give him some credit. He jumped from WCW before the merger. He was smart. He came to WWE early.
Yeah, he bet on himself. Yeah.
He bet on himself. And that was really smart of him. And he had longevity. I mean, second to none. He's been a top guy. I mean, he's been the top half on the card forever. I think he's headlined I think he's in the top 5 of most headline pay-per-views in WWE still. So he's been there.
How can you say he's not the guy?
He's always been the guy to lose those matches. He's never been the guy to hold the belt.
That's why I said he's got a lot in common with your Triple H, doesn't he?
Triple H, there's a difference. Triple H is 14, 15-time world champion.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything.
Jericho is a 2-time.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. Like, if you win the belt and lose the belt like 8 times in 2 months, and you rack up that count, like, what does that even mean? Like, you could argue that all that means is that the belt was poorly booked while you were working.
I mean, you're not wrong there. But, I mean, Triple H has been a top guy. I mean, after Stone Cold, The Rock, all them left, they needed a top guy on Raw, and that Triple H was the guy, not Chris Jericho. And yes, it did help Triple H to marry Stephanie.
Yeah,
I mean definitely helped.
That's the thing. Like,
I cannot argue that. That definitely helped his case.
Maybe that makes him the top guy. I don't know, but okay. So in conclusion, Chris Jericho's on the mountain, and
I give him top 50.
Jesus Christ.
I jumped up 25. No, I really do like Chris Jericho, and I've always been a fan of Chris Jericho. I just wouldn't put him in the top 5.
All right. Well, let's recap here. So I'll give you a chance to swap anyone else in if you've thought about it and changed your mind. But I believe you're Mount Rushmore. We both had Stone Cold. You have Kurt Angle, Triple H, and Undertaker. Is that your Rushmore? Are you locking that in?
Like I said, I could wake up tomorrow and be completely different. I think the only one that like I can guarantee will be there every time is the Undertaker and Stone Cold. Yeah. I think they're locked in forever. For now. But
they're locked in forever for now.
Yeah, I can unlock it whenever I want. Let's be serious.
60% of the time it works every time.
There's one person I would like to ask you about. There's 2 people actually I want to ask you about. And they're not on my Rushmore, but I could see them being on. What about Brock Lesnar?
He's never really done it for me, to be honest.
Okay.
He's not. He's not. I didn't even consider him.
But would you consider? I mean, he is one of the biggest draws ever.
He is, and I think he does a really great job of presenting himself as an absolute monster.
Yep.
And I think that's where his value is, but that doesn't really do much for me. All that really does for me is set up a relatively amorphous villain for somebody else, and it's really about the other person whenever he's
Okay.
wrestling someone.
Okay. And like, I think he's in that
I
list.
know you love
Because
him, and so I'm not knocking him. I'm not. I'm just. I mean, maybe I am knocking him, but I don't mean to be. I'm not trying to like poo poo on him. I'm just saying like at the level where you can only choose four from everyone ever, he's not in the conversation for me.
right, I think he's the greatest monster, I guess you would call him, like big
Yeah.
guy. But what about this now? What about Roman?
No way, Roman. No, 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 no. Roman, dude. This guy had. He's how many years he's been around? He's had one good year of story. And I got to be honest, like again, I really hate. I don't mean to take a dump on anyone, but like I'm not compared to everyone else that's working right now. His wrestling is not on their level, and I'm not, and
I
I'm and maybe it could be, but the guy never wrestles.
I my only argument about that is a lot of these top guys don't like John. Let's be serious. John Cena's wrestling was awful, but
Maybe it was. I don't know, but I think
that's
like
everything else was just so good that everyone overlooked it.
I think with
Actually, everyone hated him for
the
a
thing
long
with
time.
Roman
But
Reigns is like I just feel like he's an example of like this guy that WWE managed to force him into that position, and the fans fought it kicking and screaming, and then WWE finally won, and it's a credit to their writing. But but I will say like that whole storyline was popping off the first half of this year and the second half of last year. But aside from that, I think there's not really much to report on Roman Reigns. And a lot of that story that we're talking about has as much to do with everyone else involved with it as it does Roman.
okay, I don't hate that. I agree with you. I think longevity wise, you can't. I mean, I think this Tribal Chief is great, but like you said, that's not a long. It has been long enough.
Yeah,
Um,
I
what
agree.
about Randy Orton? Now, I know he's pretty much just Triple H.
I
I
have I
know.
have I have nothing bad to say about Randy Orton, and but I would say like I haven't seen very much of him at all. Most of his career is from a time that I didn't watch wrestling.
Okay. Now, a lot of people think, and there's still time. He might be the guy to beat Ric Flair's record. He needs two more belts.
16 time.
Yep, he's at 14.
I mean, as long as they're going to keep that belt on Roman, he's got half the chance.
you know, I he could be the guy to beat Cody when Cody wins it. But
Could be.
those are the only other ones I think. I mean, you have Dusty Rhodes, which again, that's just my age. I know
Yeah,
he was so good, but
I think like Iron Grudge is throwing out Dusty Rhodes and Gorgeous George, and I think there's other guys that come up like we mentioned Bruno Sammartino, and there's these older guys. I think that like for me, if I had to pick someone from all of that era, which is I admittedly half blind because I am not super knowledgeable in that era. For me, it's superstar Billy Graham, but it could just as easily be Dusty Rhodes. I do wonder, like Dusty Rhodes. I got to be honest. I think that like in the American South, he is held up on a much higher level than say where I'm from, because I didn't know who he was until I saw him much later in life showing up in that polka dot outfit on WWE, essentially being a jobber. So, and his son happens to be one of the biggest names of wrestling today, so that certainly elevates him, and it's hard to gauge whether or not that elevation is like comparable to what it was like when he was wrestling or not. I don't know.
I
The other
agree.
guy that was on my short list that I did not ultimately pick, but I really wanted to, was Macho Man Randy Savage. I feel like I feel like the one thing missing from my Mount Rushmore is like an iconic like 80s WWF wrestling superstar. And if I'm not going to put Hogan on, then I'm going to put Macho Man on.
I agree with what you said with Hogan earlier, how he's kind of household. Everyone knows Macho Man still.
Yeah, that's why.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
was that the Kool-Aid guy? Did I just do the Kool-Aid guy?
It sounded more like Macho Man than the Kool-Aid
Okay,
guy to me, but
okay.
they both have the same catchphrase, I guess.
All right.
Yeah, I think that if I was gonna pick, and maybe the hard part is like if I was gonna take somebody off to put Macho Man on, it would have to be either Hitman or Chris Jericho, because I'm not gonna take off Ric Flair and I'm not gonna take off Stone Cold. So if you give me 5, Macho Man's my 5th guy. And I feel like if we would have had this conversation tomorrow, I might have picked Macho Man over Bret Hart or Chris Jericho. I don't know. Maybe part of it is I'm motivated to pick Chris Jericho because I know it's going to piss you off.
Hey, it actually went a lot more civil than I was hoping. Actually,
I was hoping for.
I was hoping start slamming stuff around.
Well, Macho Man's definitely on my personal. Like if I said like, the rest of the world be damned. Who's my top 4 favorite guys of all time? Macho Man's definitely on there. But that's a tougher one to gauge because there's a lot of wrestlers that I really feel like are my favorite wrestlers right now, but their careers are not finished. They're, it remains to be seen when it's all said and done what I'll think of them.
Yeah, it is hard to think of. Like and this is me being biased, probably. Like I kind of like Kenny Omega for some reason, and I think he's great technical wise. Personally, I just can't ever see him on that Mount Rushmore.
I
And
think
that's a bias, probably.
I think Kenny Omega has had kind of a low key 2023. It's a hard time to like judge his career because I think his career is, I don't want to say it's at a low point. It's not going bad, but it is like not on the level that it's been for several years prior, So it's a good example. Like it's a weird time to judge Kenny Omega
Yeah.
because he's kind of like become a bit of a mid-carder lately. And, which I think is fine. Like, I think you can't have the same people. Moxley's in that boat too, right? You can't have the same people at the top of the card perpetually. It gets boring. So it's good that it's happening, but
Moxley's
Andre's
another
a
guy.
good pick. Yeah, Iron Grudge.
I could never put Moxley in my top either. I look, I think out of those 3, I mean, if you want to go back to the Shield, Moxley, Roman, and Rollins, Moxley's the weakest of the 3. Yeah, I know he's doing great in AEW, but I still think he's the weakest of the 3.
I like Moxley. I like that he's in AEW. I like what he brings to it. He's not the kind of wrestler that I generally go crazy for. So I have like nothing but respect for him, but you're not going to get a strong argument from me that he's my favorite.
Ugh, come on, help me out here.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, I think I kind of want to come back to this because there are some fun things we could do with Mount Rushmore's. Maybe next time Coltrane skips out on us, we'll continue this conversation. But what is your personal Mount Rushmore's? What's your Mount Rushmore for the worst? Who are the worst wrestlers? Is Hogan in that conversation? I don't know, but it's been fun. But folks, we did it. We carried a conversation without Coltrane. It was a 3 out of 5 conversation, but it wasn't a 2 out of 5.
Hey, I know. I feel like we should have argued more.
Yeah.
Next time.
Well, I did say that Kurt Angle thing was a dumb choice.
Kurt Angle is an Olympic gold medalist with a broken neck.
The problem is I couldn't come down too hard on you because I do love Kurt Angle. So I don't want like, obviously Kurt Angle's going to hear about this podcast. I don't want him to think that I don't.
Now, Sir 18 Willen had a good point. I did just watch his documentary and I was in love with it. And he was just on Joe Rogan. So maybe I'm a little too close to the fire right now with him.
Right. All right. Well, either way, it was fun. And folks, it's been fun. Chat, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. It's been a good time. All right. Next week, Coltrane should be back. We are going to start our Montreal Screwjob program. We're going to start at the start. Before we get into the weeds of the he said, she said, of the documentaries, of the opinions, of the Jim Cornettes of the world, and the Jake the Snakes of the world, and the Vince McMahons and the Bret Harts and everyone else who's got something to say about it. We're going to actually just watch Survivor Series 1997. So if you want to follow along with us next week, it'd be a good time to fire up your WWE Network subscription or your Peacock subscription, depending where you are, and tune in and watch Survivor Series 1997. And we're going to talk about it next week, and we're going to get Coltrane's opinion. And from there, we're going to dig a little deeper, but it starts there. Also, if you'd like to write to us, we would love to read anything relatively appropriate on the show. You can tweet at the Shoe Boots, or you can email wrestlinglosers@gmail.com. Any final thoughts, Tex?
I thought this show was a lot more peaceful out of Coltrane with all his screaming and yelling. That being said, I do miss him and can't wait for next week.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the best Coltrane I can do. All right. That's going to do it for me and for Tex and probably for Coltrane. Later, losers.